November Strategy and Policy Committee meeting reconvened.
Mr. Chair, I'm maybe an apology for lateness depending on how we go. I had to leave at about 5:30. I would just like to request that, with your leave, that item 13, as I'm chair of the Frankton Working Group, be come up after the current item.
Just hold on a minute, I'll do apologies soon. So firstly, I'd like to welcome everybody here, members, staff, media, and interested parties and those who are watching. Okay, apologies that I have Councillor Forsyth and Councillor Wilson and Councillor Green. So
I'll move.
Hang on, Angela. You're going to be...
So, thank you. Depending on how the meeting goes, I will have to leave at approximately 5:30.
Okay. So I just want to talk about the order of the meeting now. The order of the meeting had already been set yesterday, but Blair has indicated that he must get through the pool fencing tonight because it's the last night. Submissions closed tonight, so we need to address that second after the the lap, okay, the proposed the provisional lap. So Angela, would you like to change your order, put something else in after that?
So yes, Chair, if you would move item 13, the Frankton Neighbourhood Plan, as I'm the chair of that working group, up after the General Manager's item, I'd appreciate that.
Okay, so have we got a mover and a seconder for that?
I'll move that amended.
Thank you. All those for? Anyone against? Okay, that's carried. Okay, so I'm reopening item 8, which we ran out of time on, and so I'm reopening the provisional lab. Supplementary staff paper. A supplementary paper was circulated yesterday. Thank you, General Manager Blair. And it was now prior to the meeting being adjourned on the, what date was it? The 3rd. Councillor McPherson had put up a provisional procedural motion. So can we have your motion up on the board, please?
Thanks. I've just been in discussion with the exact wording with Jude during the day, so hopefully she has it there. And if I may make a brief explanation to that, I don't want to relitigate any of the individual items within it. The purpose of that procedural resolution is to refer all the matters that were under discussion at the end of the 3rd, in the last item being discussed there, to the next full council meeting on the 26th of November, without picking winners. In fact, there were winners that became losers later on, etc. So the purpose is to have all of the items go forward there, and in particular the 3 issues that were identified and voted on separately all go forward. With the report that Blair has produced identifies those individual resolutions that were passed, the amendments that were lost, identifies the final resolution that was lost, and I think that they should all go forward for a final decision making at that council meeting, and that's all I'm proposing.
So is there a seconder for that motion? Councillor Gallagher. Okay, we'll open now for questions.
Thank you. Is the net effect of what you're doing, Dave, that rather than us making a decision here and then that recommendation go through to that council meeting, we send presumably two options through to the council meeting without a recommendation from the...
Certainly without a recommendation. I'm not sure that 2 options is the right description, because there were in 3 individual areas a preference was indicated, yes, but then collected together, that wasn't supported by the committee, which became very messy. So there are going to be more people at the council meeting, and that's going to be responsible in any event to make a final decision. Even if there weren't more, even if there were less, it would still have to make the decision. So I'm just saying, leave it to one meeting rather than have two messy meetings. Finalise it, have it at the place it can be finalised.
Okay. Just to be just be clear on what my question meant. Sorry, we had a motion, we then had an amendment. Those would be the two options that would go forward. Is that right?
Well, I expect so, yes. But individually, the three items that were voted on will also go forward. They're in the the manager's report.
Okay.
Sorry, Chair, could I just, you made a comment about having to have the decision today. I didn't quite understand what that was about.
That was on pool fencing item 16, so I just want to bring that forward in case we run out of time to make sure we cover it off today. It's another matter. Yes, Councillor Gallagher.
Notwithstanding, I seconded because I think this seems straightforward. I wonder if I could just ask the city solicitor. My understanding is this is a committee of council. Obviously, council will make the final decision, and based on every elected member reading, through the submission process and keeping open mind, etc., then council members can, at the full council, come to a final decision, acknowledging that probably, with the exception of the three items that have been listed here in this report, there's broad consensus. So it's really, how does council, to keep within the process, resolve ultimately on what would appear to be the three items of contention?
Well, you're absolutely correct that this subcommittee of council is delegated the responsibility of the full council to consider a provisional policy and provide a recommendation back to full council for full council to ultimately decide whether or not to adopt. So the decision making, the ultimate decision making, will rest with full council. My interpretation of what occurred on Tuesday in terms of where you got to procedurally was that you had three discrete elements of a provisional LAP individually discussed, and you made a resolution to recommend to full council the content of those three individual items. Those resolutions stand on their own 2 feet, and for them to be overturned by this council, by this committee, requires standing orders to be met. Those three individual items were then rolled into an overall motion concerning an entire LAP, and that motion was defeated. So you didn't end up with a resolution to recommend a full LAP to full council. Based on the motion in front of you now, which is recommending that everything now go up to full council for consideration, the entire item, that's perfectly legal and acceptable. But we do need to make sure that, in terms of everyone's understanding, the resolutions that were passed at Tuesday's meeting need to be reflected in the report and recommendations that go to full council. They might then be redebated and lost or won again at full council, but we do need to respect the resolutions that were made on Tuesday. And so long as referring the full item to full council captures those three resolutions, and also reflects the fact that the full resolution around a full LAP was lost, then I think procedurally you're sound.
And if I could say, through you, Mr. Chair, Blair's report that's come out does exactly, lists them all in here, and it lists the lost motion as well. So all four, if you like, are in there, plus other supporting stuff. So that's my understanding of what my procedural resolution would do.
So just I've got this clear, and I think I'm clear, but it's obviously important around a process, because we're in a process, and if we get it wrong, then obviously our external parties can really turn this one over. Full council obviously has the final decision. We are but a recommending body.
Correct.
So in terms of meeting procedure, if you have full council fundamentally having consensus on just about everything of the LAP, bar 3 major items, then those items, if an elected member so chooses, can recommit. So they stand as recommendations from the majority of this committee, but they can then be, any member can call up the specific item and retest that, one-way door, trading, whatever, the 3 items, and retest it, and then the full council may vote based on that all elected members maintain open mind, and based on that all elected members are referring only to the submission, the formal submission process that was done at the beginning of the process. Is that a fair?
That's a fair summary, absolutely,
Right.
yes. I mean, to be very clear, what in terms of getting this matter in front of full council needs to have a report to it which confirms the resolutions that were made at the subcommittee on Tuesday. There are 3 resolutions concerning individual items. They need to be in front of the full council as the recommendations from this subcommittee. The full council also needs to be aware that there was a resolution to fold those 3 recommended items into a full lap, which was lost. All of that information needs to be in front of full council, and then if full council wants to make its own decision based on all the information in front of it, it's entitled to. And that may or may not be consistent with the recommendations of this subcommittee. That's a decision for you as full council.
Thank you.
Mayor Hardacre.
So I'm just looking at the 3.11, which is the section on procedural motions. So it may be Lachlan, or it may be the General Manager, or it may be the Democracy Manager. I just need to understand clearly which section of that clause is being used for this procedural motion, and just confirmation that all requirements in respect of procedural motions have been complied with in terms of who can move. So which subsection is it that this procedural motion?
I'm happy to respond to that, Mr. Chairman.
So which one is it?
311(1), paragraph F.
Okay, so when it says that, then an item of business being discussed be referred.
Yes.
So can I have some clarification then? That implies to me that it is just a continuation of the current item of business under discussion, as opposed to a sort of stop here and a new start there. So have I got that right?
My understanding of the intent of that procedural motion is that the item of business, the provisional local alcohol policy LAP, be all referred to the council.
Yes, and I understand what it says. I'm asking, is that then, given that F has been relied on, simply a continuation of the discussion currently, as opposed to we have made some decisions on 3 items?
Yeah.
And because what I'm trying to understand here, the difference between a procedural motion and simply a normal motion to incorporate into the draft the decisions already made and then refer it up to the council for further discussion. I'm trying to get the difference here. So
I'll start, and then Lachlan can come in after me. My understanding is that this committee is now wrapping this whole item of business up and sending the whole package up to its parent body, as it were, up to a hierarchy, the council, to deal with. So my understanding is it's the total item of business going, not stopping the discussion and continuing it because it's a different body. I don't consider that it's a continuation of the same discussion. I think procedurally it's the whole item being packaged up now and giving it to the decision maker, which is the council. And in terms of movers and seconders and whether that's compliant, my understanding is Councillor McPherson, I listened to the tape just to be very clear procedurally, there had been a motion that had been moved, seconded, voted on. So there was nothing on the table. There was no mover. There was no seconder. So that left the floor open then for Councillor McPherson to move the procedural motion. So that's my understanding. Lachlan may want to add to that.
No, that's accurate. I mean, the only difference is when the item of business moves back to full council, you're not constrained by the recommendatory powers that the subcommittee is, so you can ultimately determine the matter.
Yes, right. So what's the difference then between this and a motion that would ask staff to incorporate changes into the draft, because those have been decisions already made in this committee, and then refer that draft policy as it stands through to the council for final decision?
I'm
on
sorry,
the policy?
sorry, point of order here. Surely procedural motions, if there's more than one on the table, the one that's put first has priority to be dealt with. If it's lost, that's another matter. The floor is then open for any subsequent procedural motions. But maybe I could ask through you, Mr. Chair, if the democracy manager could advise us on the procedure for hearing procedural motions. I always understood that if you were there first with one, which the tape clearly shows I was, then that's dealt with one way or another.
Sorry, Chair, no, I'm not asking about procedure motions.
Well, I have a procedural motion on the table. I'm wanting it to be put, and I think that's reasonable and normal practice. The Mayor is trying to introduce an alternative, which is fine if mine's lost, I believe. Can I ask, Mr. Chair, for you to get advice from the democracy manager on that?
Sorry, Chair, I was just asking a question so that I can understand.
No, you were about
procedural
to actually
motion is.
read the motion out.
What-
your
Sorry,
alternative.
Absolutely
Excuse
not.
me. Excuse me. What's your question, Mayor Hardigan?
I've asked the question.
Could I ask, through the chair, that the Mayor asked?
I'm sorry, I have to insist. I have a procedural motion on the floor. It's been authorised by staff as being proper. I think that needs to be proceeded with,
Look,
not other matters.
I'm happy for people to ask questions, but no debate. Okay, so if people want to ask questions before we vote, that's fine, but there's no debate on this matter. All right, it's not a normal motion where we debate it. It's questions to understand it, and then we vote.
Well, yeah, and that's the point I'm making. All the other questions were about my procedural motion and its effect. The Mayor is asking about another item, which she started with the words, "What's the difference between this and so forth?" And that's when she started to stray away from this resolution.
It's my understanding, and the advice I've just given to the chair, is that the Mayor is attempting just to understand the meaning of the procedural motion. She's not proposing an alternative motion, so she's just merely asking questions. So that's the advice I've given the chair.
I'm simply trying to understand. In fact, people around me are saying, yes, they want to know. I want to know what the difference is between a procedural motion and another motion. That's why I'm asking these questions. So we don't have procedural motions very often. And I'm just trying to understand, is there a difference? Because if there isn't, great. It's clear to me then what happens. But if there is actually a difference, I'd like that explained to me. What's the difference?
Can I have the question, please? It was the difference between this procedural motion
Yes.
and some other hypothetical?
Yes,
Can I have
like
the
a
other
normal
hypothetical?
motion, like a
Yes.
normal motion, and I used it to illustrate the point so that it was clear. So what's the difference between a procedural motion on sending it up and just a normal motion sending it up? Or is there a difference?
I'm not sure that there is any difference. I'm sorry, Your Worship, I can't answer that question without studying the standing orders further. I don't know the difference.
Mr. Chair, I have asked 3 times now for a comment from the democracy manager as to what is the correct way of handling a procedural motion, and with my belief that it should be handled first above all else when a procedural motion comes forward.
Just try and answer, Your Worship, the Mayor's question. My understanding of the difference between a procedural motion and a normal motion that happens through the flow of the business, a procedural motion stops procedures, stops the process where they are, and there's no debate, no discussion, and that item of business under the procedural motion that Councillor McPherson goes somewhere. A motion that is not a procedural motion is then subject to discussion, it's subject to debate, it's subject to amendment. It's really a completely different beast, as it were. So they're both motions, but there is a difference. One closes it, moves it somewhere. The other one puts it on the table, opens it up for debate, opens it up for amendment, opens it up for foreshadowed amendments, and the pebble rolls. So, but a procedural motion stops it, deal with it, vote it, for, against, move on.
Okay, are there any more questions? Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Look, I don't have a problem with the date. At that November 26 meeting, if that's what the decision is, am I still able to raise the issue of a non-policy, in other words, no LAP, which is one of the options? I just want to make sure that whatever procedural and technical and all those other things move forward, I can still raise that as an issue.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we'll put it to the vote. All those in favour, raise your hand.
Councillors Tooman, Mallet,
Everyone.
unanimous.
Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to item 16. Thank you again, Lachlan.
Charge for the sleeping time in between.
Thanks for those free seats on Kiwi Air, Dave.
Sorry? I've got some more coming.
Okay, welcome.
What item, sorry? Item
Is the Frampton?
Oh, it is
Frankton.
all first, don't we?
Is it the Frankton? What?
No, sorry, we've whipped straight over to item
16.
16, which is the draft submission for the building pool fences.
Page 226.
Oh, sorry?
Page 226.
226, thank you.
I'll move.
No, it's not procedural.
Sorry.
I wanted to discuss
My paperwork says you're full, but I don't think you are. Can you introduce yourself?
Sorry, Bryce Keogh,
226 was
from Building Units, Quality Advisor.
Great, thank you, and welcome, Aaron. So would you like to we'll take the item as
Take
read?
the report as read.
Yeah, okay. Do you want to just quickly touch on what it's about, Aaron? Basically, there's a submission that's got to be in tonight, is that correct?
That is correct. The
Yes.
submission's due today. The submission's been previously circulated.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'll take the report as read.
Okay, so moved by O'Leary, Councillor O'Leary, sorry,
Thank you.
and seconded by
Thank you.
Councillor
Well
Tooman. Any questions or debate? Yes, Gary.
Yeah, there has been some contention in the media about this being less of a safety issue. Sorry, I'm hearing things on the media suggesting that this will make our pools less safe.
The changes that do affect the pool fencing are in regards to having to fence a spa pool. So they are reducing the requirement to fence a spa pool of certain types, providing it has a cover. However, they are including a regime of 5-yearly inspections, which previously was not required to be undertaken.
So there was no inspection regime. You just had to have
No.
it fenced, and
Correct.
the only enforcement was a neighbour dobbing you in or something, was it?
Or a general inspection carried out under a building consent. So if we ventured onto the property and
So what we're now
identified
doing
an
is
issue,
regularising the process of checking your fence and making sure it's
ensuring it's
adequate
compliant.
Yep.
Correct.
every 5 years.
Every 5
And the fence owner pays for it.
And
The pool owner,
currently, the submission we are looking to include within the Act, or strengthen within the Act, that we can pay for that.
Thank you.
Cost.
Councillor Pascoe.
Thanks, Chair. Just a very quick question. It's my understanding in the draft legislation that the pool fences must be compliant with the Pool Fencing Act as it was at the time that compliance was granted, as opposed to any changes that might have occurred subsequent to that compliance time. Correct. Is that correct? So the inspections are not necessarily going to require pool owners with compliant fences to upgrade those if the legislation has subsequently changed or does change?
That's correct. They are citing the existing Act as a means of compliance, so we will be checking to the
code of compliance at the time that it was granted. Yep, thank you.
Councillor Gallagher.
In terms of your understanding of this new legislation as it's currently written, and if you're taking a child safety focus, do you have any? Is there any concerns?
If anything, I believe that it is going to be more beneficial with the 5-yearly checking, because within any period of time since the CCC, the pool may be non-compliant.
So for a spa pool thing, the lid essentially becomes a very important safety ingredient that the
correct,
and the onus then becomes on the adults to replace the lid after use and,
yes,
and go through the, and to a degree that's the same as latching a gate.
To a degree, it's the same as latching a gate or closing a ranch slider, which is lockable into a pool area. So the onus is on the owner to ensure that.
Because without putting words in your mouth, when you go along streams and rivers and lakes, you normally don't let a 4-year-old wander unattended in those areas. You tend to keep an eye on. That's parenting. But of course, in the home, which has many, many distractions, a home, so it's just, I'm just trying to get the balance between an adequate sort of checks and balances to, obviously encourage to make sure that they.
Yeah. The onus is on the individual to ensure that the spa pool is adequately covered.
Yeah. Thank you.
Gary.
Should this regulation be implemented, how will we monitor it? So where will we record that a person has got a pool fence that needs to be checked every 5 years?
Currently, it would be off a register of existing building consent pools. We also have pools which have been notified to us as council. So we would look...
In very simplistic terms, will you be able to push a button and say, give me the list of pools that have fences that need to be checked this month and then next month? Leaving aside the fact that you
of
can't...
the known ones, yeah.
Yeah. And collecting up details about unknown ones, because there've been pools being built for a century, that will happen over time as information...
As known.
Yeah, as they become known. Okay. So you're confident we've got a satisfactory system for capturing and updating that information?
A register will need to be compiled before January 2017 so that we can ongoing 5-yearly maintain.
We couldn't do that now?
We could report on the pools that we have currently on file.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Any debate?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put the motion. Those for? Any against? Okay, thank you. We'll go to item 13. Councillor McPherson needs to leave now. Just a reminder.
It's 100 years old. Is it Waikato or actually the clock license? Broken by now. Yeah.
Okay, welcome, guys.
Good afternoon.
We'll take the report as read and introduce you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor King. Happy for the report to be taken as read. Just a bit of a verbal praise here. Essentially, the Strategy and Policy Committee resolved to develop this plan in September last year. Staff have gone away and have done that, with a working group and a focus group. And the resolution that we're seeking from you today is for the report to be received and for you to authorise the public notification of the draft plan that's attached to the report, and for us to report back to strategy and policy once that period of engagement is complete, and we've had an opportunity to take on board any feedback we received during that period of time. Happy to take any questions.
Yes, Councillor Mallett.
Thank you. To what extent do the ambitions of the Frankton Neighbourhood Plan run foul of our proposed district plan? And I'll give you a couple of examples that I know of because they've been brought to my attention. I think that they run I know a chap who was looking to buy a residential house and put an accounting office in it on Massey Street, which I presume would have been supportive of the Frankton trying to increase commerce, vibrancy, etc. Wasn't allowed to because the proposed district plan, I'm pretty sure, stymied that. Or you had to go through a resource consent and all that sort of carry on. Secondly, and you would have been aware of this one, I think, a personal training studio in Kent Street, which again was stymied by the district plan, which I think that sort of activity, those sorts of things, increased commerce, movement, more people arriving into Frankton, minimal increase in vehicle movements, certainly no increase in pollution or noise or horrible buildings, etc. Reusing existing buildings. One of the buildings is an empty building which needs to be inhabited, or it's going to fall apart. Well, not fall apart, but it'll just degrade. To what extent does our district plan and this thing clash? Has anyone done an analysis of that?
Yeah, so I can answer that. And the first thing to note is that the Frankton Plan is not an RMA planning document. It has no statutory authorities as per the PDP. So the other thing too is that the study area for the Frankton Plan covers a multitude of zones, which include under the PDP landed zone, industrial, special heritage area, general residential intensification, open space, community facilities, and some of the land around the area, sort of around Somerset Street, etc. That's subject to a separate appeal. And we're working through the appellants on that. So in my view, this doesn't go into the same level of detail as a PDP. It's strategically consistent. Yeah,
so that's kind of my, and I'm going to use some words that you might not be happy with, but we've got this aspirational fairyland's the wrong word, but we want to turn it into Venice or something down in Frankton, but we want to keep their Frankton heritage and that sort of carrying. But you've got people right now, before the Frankton plan was even devised, trying to do the sorts of things, not exactly what's outlined in here, but it's people exercising their freedoms and bringing commerce and bringing vibrancy to the place, stymied by the district plan. Now, I know this is aspirational, and it isn't as prescriptive as district plan. Nothing's as prescriptive as a district plan. But I just wonder to what extent if we've got a plan, one plan coming up here, another plan going there, and they're just going to crash in the middle. And it just surprises me that is there an analysis being done in this process to say, whoa, actually, half of the things we want here are stymied by we've got this fetish about looking after the CBD, and hang on, all of these guys who we'd love to see in the Frankton, actually you're supposed to be in the CBD because that's what our district plan says because of our hierarchy and our whatever the big plan's called, the one at the top.
Yeah, so as I said, they're two very different documents serving different purposes. One,
but that's my point. Yeah, but
they're strategically aligned.
They need to, because they're going to butt up, all right.
Yeah, so
they're going to cancel each other out.
Like I can say to you that in my view, they're strategically consistent. So the RMA document in the district plan deals very specifically with land uses and how they're regulated. This document doesn't do that.
The district plan also, if I may, as chair of the working group, also speaks to Frankton being a character area and to having a plan for Frankton, and that was put in when we first did the district plan some years ago.
But it
is tied in.
Okay.
The plan, the result that we're looking at today, has been spoken to in the text of the district plan.
I guess that my concern is I've just got two very clear, concrete examples where I think And whether or not I agree with the Frankton plan, I can just see a situation where we've got something on our books, or nearly on our books, as much as the district plan ever gets on your books, and is still, but we've got something nearly there, which is going to prevent some of the neat ideas in the Frankton plan. It just, I mean, you may or may not. I brought them to your attention, but
Sure.
you may not remember these two instances. I think would be things that the Frankton plan would applaud, but our district plan shuts down.
Look, I don't agree with the comment. I'm sorry. As I said, they're different documents. They one's prepared under separate legislation, and is used in a very specific way under the RMA. And I don't see the two documents are inconsistent.
Okay, so I'll just give it one more go.
Yeah.
To what extent? So no analysis has been done to say. For example, the Frankton Community Plan tries to bring people into the place, and I won't use the word places of assembly, but to what extent do the things in the Frankton Plan simply get cancelled out because the district plan won't allow them? Do you know? Like, have you looked at the issues in here?
Well, I suppose, Councillor Mellett, the Frankton Neighbourhood Plan isn't specifying activities.
Yeah.
As he's saying, it's specifying outcomes. And the outcomes are, identified in terms of, growing the economy, preserving, Frankton's history, strengthening connections, etc. And I don't see them as being inconsistent with, as I said, because the zoning for Frankton under the PDP, there's lots of different zones, so it's not like there's one blanket zone over the whole of the study area that says, no commerce can happen there. We've got one of the largest suburban centres in the PDPs in Frankton, a whole bunch of office and retail, and a whole bunch of activities can happen there. We're working through the appellants on other parts of Frankton at the moment to enable a range of other activities to occur in that area. We've got the industrial zoning, so the extent to which these two are aligned, I'm comfortable that they're aligned and that they're not cancelling each other out.
Yes.
A question, Luke, and this might answer Gary's concerns.
Sure.
I take it under the district plan there's no problem with Gary's accountant friend from opening an accounting practice in the main street, upstairs or whatever, of Frankton.
No, as I said,
And the same with the gym guy if he's...
So there's, through the appeals to the PDP, we're looking at specifically providing for gymnasiums as permitted activities in the industrial zone, so parts of Frankton which are industrial. Once those provisions are settled, gymnasiums, as an example, would be provided for as a permitted activity.
But those two examples are examples where you're not lying, but those are two examples where exactly what you said couldn't happen. Now, maybe we're talking about different part.
If I recollect that your question to me on that was in September last year, around those activities, immediately after the decisions were issued. We're now over a year later, through a huge amount of work in terms of appeals and mediations, etc., and working through those people. Things like offices and retail, as Councillor Pascoe has indicated, in the suburban centre, those places are provided for.
So there's been a slight change in the...
No, they were always provided for in the town centre. So it's a suburban centre zoning. As I said, there's many different zones in Frankton, Councillor Mellett. So in some parts of Frankton, in the business zones, they're provided for. In the industrial zone, things like gymnasiums, etc., through the appeals that we're working with the appellants to the industrial zone, and specifically in relation to parts of Frankton, we're looking at providing for those things. They'll be hopefully agreed to through a consent order with the court.
Sorry, I jumped in on your question.
Right. Thank you.
Did I answer that for you? Is that?
Yes, you did. Yes.
Okay.
Any further questions? Okay. The staff recommendation.
I'll move.
I'll second.
Page 197. Debate. Councillor Gallagher.
I moved, Chair.
Sorry.
So could I have the first
Sure, you
and
can.
then my...
Certainly do.
Thank you, Councillor Gallagher. Look, this has been actually for me a very, very long time coming. I started with council in 2007, and with my newness to council, I relied on the support out there in the community and the networks that I had to quickly get up to speed. And of course, we know that there was a quite a large car race in the city as well. So my connections with Frankton began through my chairing of a Frankton group way back then. So this has been a very long time coming. Look, this is a fantastic plan. Look, I'm really excited about this. This has been the work of the elected members, myself, who worship the Mayor, and Councillor Gallagher over the past, oh goodness, I don't know how many months, and of course staff and the external members. And we've had external members not only on the working group but the focus group as well. And these are people that have been, I guess, living and working in Frankton, some of them owner-operators in buildings for 30 to 35 years, and they have strong history and strong ties. As I mentioned before to a question, this is the Frankton plan was identified, and the Frankton area was identified in the district plan some years ago, and it's really exciting to me that finally we're here. We're fortunate in the city to not have just one but two very special character areas, and I know my colleague Councillor Gallagher is keen to get started on the Hamilton East plan, which will follow from the Frankton plan that we've done. And we've recognised these areas as special character because they are the founders of our city, and Frankton was the city when it first started way back. So you know, some of the elements of the plan has been a great journey and talks about the stories and the people. And I've heard in previous debates today, you know, this is about people, this is about people. Well, this absolutely is. This is about people visiting Frankton. It's about them living in Frankton. It's about them working in Frankton, walking in Frankton and talking about Frankton. And that really and truly is something to celebrate. It is rich in history. And one of the 5 elements of this plan is to embrace and enhance that. And I hope elected members have really had a good read of it, not look past the pretty pictures, because there's some fantastic projects in there. Some of the key ones for me that I think the community will be excited about, of course, put beautification on the top of the list. Frankton has been waiting for a really long time for that. But other things around the Frankton Museum, the Heritage Museum, the Heritage Trail, conservation plan, demarcating Frankton with its own unique gateway. Look, they're really exciting, and along the journey of this plan, we have had considerable input from stakeholders, and they're very excited by this and strongly support it. So I know that staff are preparing an open day, and I would encourage elected members to come along to that, to hear from the people that live and work and play in Frankton about their ideas and their support for the plan. So look, that's really all I have to say. It's been a long time coming, and I'm thrilled that it's finally here. And again, just want to thank the members of the working group, the focus group, and also staff who have done a lot of work on this. So thank you very much. I hope you support it.
Councillor Gallagher.
Yes, I'm happy to second this, and like the Chair, I compliment all the staff and the volunteers and the external members of the working group, and I want to actually compliment Chair Angela on her leadership and her passion and her enthusiasm. And those of you who haven't read, I think it was Mr. Lafferty, a book,
Yeah.
history book, very worth reading, because it talks about the incredible families that were involved in the evolution of Frankton and its history. And of course, one of those, Mr. Forlong, of course, the Forlong family is a good example of the ongoing link. You yourself, Mr. Chair, worked in a business along Commerce Street as an office boy in the Frankton area and got your start, or helped, hopefully, there. But, you know, for us, it's got many nostalgic associations from childhood, and won't bore people, but of course, Forlongs, they used to have the TV in the window, and you go along and watch it. They had a speaker outside to watch the TV machine. Being lost and running away to the railway station as a 4-year-old. As a parent, perhaps I'm more empathetic to how my parents felt at the time when they discovered me missing. But what's important is that this, again, you know, and if I can just take one aspect, the railway suburb, and we talk about the railway component, if we have a future focus and a future-proof dream, it is one day Frankton will also be one of Hamilton's gateways, because it will be, again, the prime commuter station to Greater Auckland for the regular commuter train that I believe will happen, along with the Te Rapa base station. And in terms of this plan, we need to make sure that this plan, while it's about character, it's about future-proofing and future focus. Councillor O'Leary talked about my enthusiasm and others for Hamilton East, but can I say I'm not in a hurry to rush into Hamilton East, in the sense that I think we want to get the rubber on the road. We want to actually get the tracks going, and the big challenge for us within our constrained financial circumstances and looking at funders and all of this is how do we actually give effect to all the good ideas in this plan. And I do see this plan folding into the Central City Transformation Plan and folding into the Ferrybank Plan. There are three sort of components, and those three components, actually along with Hamilton East, are part of the old Hamilton/Frankton board, the old Hamilton Borough and the Frankton board, the Frankton Borough that eventually merged. They are, if you like, part of old Hamilton and our sort of broader central precinct. So I think there's lots of ideas, and I do listen closely to Councillor Mallett to make sure that in our district plan, and a district plan is always under constant review. Do we get it totally right? No. You know, from the day it's up, you're looking at the next one, and I want to make sure that we don't have a situation where we have a wonderful plan to encourage activity and vibrance and business, but that's contradicted by aspects of our district plan. So we've got to be, you know, again, just wanting to move those two together, and that's a constant review and negotiation, and all of that probably can resolve a lot of those issues, Mr. Chair. You know, the pocket parks innovation, the street signage, the street names, the whole character over time, and there's no doubt that I think, as we're already seeing along sections of Frankton, the significant private sector investment already, and obviously we want that to be good design, good housing, etc., etc. You know, and for example, you know, the wonderful private sector subdivision next to the Frankton Hamilton railway station, just picking it out. I've no interest in it, but it's just a good example of Queen's Avenue, of things, of positive things that are happening already, and that is good. And you can see some of the apartments, some of the new buildings going on, which by and large are really interesting and good. So without further ado, I think the big challenge for this council is to take this nice plan with its nice content and over time try, with a variety of funding sources, to actually put it into action. And as I said before, it will complement Central City Transformation, Ferrybank and Hamilton East.
Deputy Mayor Chester.
Thanks, Chair. Look, my congratulations also to Angela, to Councillor Gallagher, and in particular Mayor Julie for her usual dedicated approach to delivering on an exciting plan. Councillor Martin shared some of his personal observations, and I just should share one at least. And that was an opportunity I took just a couple of weeks ago, just before the World Cup began, to complain to Terry Forlong from Forlongs, and I've been associated with Forlongs for many, many years, about a TV set that I'd bought from him. And just 2 days before the World Cup, it blew up. So I said to Terry, look, this wasn't good enough. And he looked a bit shocked. I said, look, I'll go soft on you. I bought it from you 28 years ago, and finally it's given up. So I'm always pleased to come into Forlong and buy quality products. So I'm pleased I've gone from this size set to this size set. But that aside, the Heritage Advisory Panel that you know I chair was delighted to be asked to provide an overview of the plan and walk through the heritage areas, and it retains some remarkable pieces of history, and Councillor Geller alluded to those. So I'm excited to see that this is probably the first serious plan that's come forward on Frankton, and I think the Frankton community will be equally excited that something is going to occur finally. I look at the people that are making a difference in Frankton, the people like Terry Forlong, who just recently sold a very good piece of development land. I haven't yet heard to whom, but it's a very large piece of land at the end of Commerce Street, and I think that's going to be another bit of a game changer for the Frankton community. I look at the developer, I think it's Andrew Yeoman. I haven't met him, I don't know him, but he needs to be congratulated for the vision he's already had in creating what I describe as New York brownstone apartments. And that's created a living environment close to the village, and I think people are really going to enjoy that. And then I think about Tom Andrews, who has built a really wonderful car museum, spending millions of his own money to create really a fantastic tourist destination close to the historic building that built all of the railway houses for all of New Zealand. It still exists, some of the jigs are still there, and those houses were prefabricated in that building and railed all over the country. And you see living examples of the heritage railway cottages there, and I think it's fantastic. Tom Andrews, of course, has just spent a colossal $460,000 on a bucket of rust called a Bugatti, and he plans to restore that over the next 2 years, and it'll probably be worth $4 or $5 million. People will come from all over the world to see this particular car. So I think there's some really wonderful people in Frankton that we need to get behind and support. And I just say again, Angela, thank you for an exciting plan. There are so many of us who are older Hamilton people that we respond and reflect to it. And I'm reminded too of Councillor Geller's mention of the Frankton book by Barry Lafferty. Absolutely wonderful recollection of history in Frankton. And I urge you to try and get a copy and see what I'm talking about. So again, Angela, Martin and Julie, congratulations on a fine bit of work.
Yep, Councillor.
Okay. I'm very dubious about these things. We shouldn't need a Frankton neighbourhood plan. You'll be surprised what people do when you allow them freedom, when you protect their property rights, when you don't try and direct their activities from Central Hall. In fact, they will always do better because they'll always respond much more quickly to a changing environment. Someone starts doing a development and the properties don't sell, they'll change, they'll fold. Someone starts doing development or builds a business in Frankton and they're succeeding, they'll grow. That happens without our help. In fact, I've already explained a couple of situations where, and these are on the ground real examples, where I'm very sure that the neighbourhood plan would have run amok when it runs into the district plan. So I think this approach of developing neighbourhoods is faulty. I think neighbourhoods develop organically. They develop from inside out. They don't develop from the city hall down. And I just noticed a couple of things. You go to page 17 and there's these lovely photos of silhouettes, someone walking a dog, and there's a munter of a great tree on the footpath. And of course, there's no one showing the impact of the tree roots on the footpath, Chris. So, as per usual, the people in the PR department have painted gilded the lily, and it looks lovely. Yeah, it is a nice centre line, isn't it? That's the cycle lane, mate. There's no room for a car. And I just look at those old houses. Now, those old houses look quaint, but over time they're going to erode. They're going to get older. Someone's going to have to spend some money on them. I don't know how our urban planning team and all these sort of people, all our central planners are going to allow that to happen, or what additional costs they're going to have on those things. I don't know if those things are going to be considered heritage and therefore you can't alter them, you can't change them. I guess I'm looking at this from a very high-level philosophical point of view and thinking this is not the right way to develop neighbourhoods. Neighbourhoods develop by themselves. They don't develop because City Hall's told them to. So, and I see the budget's $20,000. That's the budget for preparing the paperwork, isn't it? That's not the budget for anything that's going to happen. Yeah. Thank you.
I'd like to speak to this too. I was brought up in Frankton. I've lived in that side of town most of my life, and Frankton's, I believe, is the best place in Hamilton. I think it's a fantastic place. Spent many hours riding my bike around. I was in shorts when I met Martin when he got his first pair of trousers. Worked for his parents in Frankton on the corner there. But I'm voting against this plan. A new district plan came out and we rezoned a lot of the land in this area, and we took away a huge amount of value from the people who owned the land and a huge amount of things that they could do with their land. Now some of these areas are still open to appeal, but we've really just devalued this whole area, huge amounts of this area. Then on top of that we're coming in now and slapping a heritage order on, no doubt, I can see it coming, on a lot of buildings that should be demolished. So there are some buildings there that need to be protected, but a small number. And it's the whole of Franklin's a very old area. They're very old buildings, and a lot of them shouldn't have heritage orders on them. So we've limited the use, we've limited the value, we've lowered the value of the properties. It appears the way that things are going, we're going to throw heritage orders on certain areas. We've locked up properties that should be demolished, we will be. That seems to be where we're heading. We're then putting an employment overlay back over the top of the change zoning, which only made it more restrictive, in my opinion. In this area, this is a long time ago, but this area should have been rezoned B4 and become a big box retail area a long time ago. And we still had the chance to open this area up to our bigger retail type stores through that whole area, right through King Street, Seddon Street, there's those whole areas. But a lot of water's gone under the bridge since then. I understand that was considered a long time ago, and then the base got traction. And then we come along now with a plan like this and throw a coat of paint on things, hang some hanging baskets up, throw a statue on the corner and call it a gateway, put some cobblestones down on the footpath after we've devalued everybody's properties, and to stroke the people and say it's all right. It's like throwing a dog to the bone. I don't think that this is good in any way. The history of what we've done, what this chamber's done to Frankton, and I don't believe that this is making good in any way to the people who own property in Frankton. Any other speakers? Angela, would you like a right of reply?
You're deflated now, aren't you?
No, not at all, actually. It does concern me that Councillor King, who has appeals into the district plan and declared a conflict of interest, can speak to this item. I just wanted to address Councillor Mallett. You talk about that it would happen without our help, and we would be surprised by that it doesn't need our help.
Planning?
Doesn't need our. Well, no, yeah, this plan here that you say that the community or the business, the residents, etc., would respond without the need for us to do it. But 17 out of these 25, if you look on page 23, 17 out of those 25 actions are actually in the responsibility of council. We're talking about parks, footpaths, reducing red tape, the Western Rail Trail, possibly establishing a bid, the bike loop, defining connections with wayfinding signs, gully restoration, gateways on council land, playground, the Frankton Hall, which is a heritage building, the overbridge, connection to the rail, and a skate park on green frames. So 17 of those actions in this plan, no one else can do. That is council's property or council's responsibility under the Local Government Act. So I do disagree with Councillor Mallett on that. Look, I think, like a lot of the things that we do, it's really important that we get feedback, and I firmly believe that the feedback we're going to get will be overwhelmingly supportive of this plan. And I just hope that the committee today, that the few that are left, will support it. Thank you.
Any other speakers? Okay, those four.
Councillors Tooman, O'Leary, Pascoe, Mayor Hardacre, Councillors Gallagher, Young and Chesterman.
Those against?
Councillors Mallett and Chairman Coates. Carried 7-2.
Okay, we now move over to item 10, which is election signs. Welcome, Jude.
Thank you.
I will take the report as read, and Jude, if you can just... Anything you want to... Any highlights?
No, I think it's pretty self-explanatory, Mr. Chairman.
Councillor Mallett.
I made a suggestion to some of my colleagues the other night that we should introduce a sinking lid policy on this and limit election signs the next election only to sitting councillors, and everyone else can't do them. And then the election after that, we ban them for everyone.
Excuse me.
Any support for that?
You can move an amendment. Any more questions?
Well, it's truly a sinking lid.
An amendment. Any other questions? Anyone like to move the recommendation?
Can I just ask a question? Sorry. When we had the discussion, we did talk about trying to make it convenient for people. And one of the things I brought up was that the sizing of signs. And we ran into a bit of a conflict, I think, with the district plan with regard to, I can't quite remember, and Deborah was there, but she's not here. Oh, there she is, just behind Gordon. Remember the big signs, from memory, I know myself because I got pinged, I was the standard sign, my own best interest, the standard sign was a fraction bigger than the permitted sign. So the standard sign that you would buy when you bought a bit of plywood sign, and I just asked that we could use those standard sizings in here rather than for the benefit of everyone, so that you don't have to get especially. Did anything happen with that?
Well, the district plan is what it is.
So that's a district plan thing, not a election signs policy thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions?
The district plan. Oh, my favourite plan. Yeah.
Yes.
Just one point of clarification, if I may, Jude.
Yes.
And that's your vehicle mounted sign. Clarify for me whether that is a sign on top of a vehicle or otherwise a
decal.
Decals made by Ed Mark and other people.
What was that?
Decals?
Like a sticker.
Like a sticker.
Oh, no, I think
I know we spoke about it.
yes, and after we had after the last committee, I tried to incorporate the feedback from both councillors Yong and yourself, Councillor Tooman, into the draft policy, which was consulted on, which I'm not recommending that is adopted in any case, but the note down the bottom. And then I worked with Chris's team, Robin, to make sure that it was all compliant with transport rules, etc. And I qualified it down the bottom, does not apply to vehicle-mounted signs or signs that are displayed on vehicles, such as they are able to travel safely and in compliance with all applicable transport rules. I took on board your feedback, Councillor, and put it in the note at the bottom of page 173.
So that means effectively that you can't put a... Well...
No, it does not apply.
If I may use Councillor Gallagher, when he was a Labor MP, he used to run around town and say, a sign on a roof rack.
No, that's not.
Doesn't apply to that.
Because it's like a commercial. It's like I'm the local plumber, I'm the local electrician,
Right.
local MP.
I think the note on the bottom of 173 is what we talked about, Councillor Tooman, that are clarified in terms of
Would it include signs towed behind a Saab jet?
Okay,
Not a
any more
trailer.
questions?
I think, Jude, to be clear, the recommendation here is that there is no election signs policy,
Yes.
that the only provisions will be the district plan pertaining to size and location, and vehicles are outside of that.
So when is a car, and a car is a moving billboard? There's a couple of little cars I've seen around, they suddenly go from being a car to a
I understand from the democracy manager, she's clarified that cars and stickers on cars is okay,
Oh,
and that's been the practice in the past.
Yes, I think what would kick in there, Councillor, is the local electoral act rules around advertising, rather than a
so
signage
those
issue.
car owners would need to read that very closely.
Yes.
Yeah, wouldn't want to impede their campaigning, of course.
Any other questions? Anyone like to move?
Could be a smart decision.
Second. Anyone like to speak to this? I'd like to speak to it. I'd just like to say it's limiting, getting rid of another rule. It's great. It's making it all more streamlined, a lot more streamlined, and I just think that this is really good. So well done, Jude. Anyone else like to speak?
Just briefly, I remember last time I mentioned about the previous policy was incomplete. So I'm really glad to see the advisory notes there. There will be a brochure to be produced, so that will clarify quite a lot of stuff. So thank you, Jude.
Okay, all.
So just one question. Principles of the policy: election sign sites shall be located on road reserve land, which is on page 175. 176. No election sign shall be placed on any council property or on any road. Am I?
Councillor Mallett, that's the old policy,
Oh.
which has been proposed for deletion. There is going to be no policy.
Oh, okay. So we're gone. Should have read it first.
Okay. All those for? Any against? Okay, we're moving on to item 11. Ruakura and Festival road stoppage. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Andrew. We'll take the report as read. Is there any highlights or anything you want to point out?
Could I just acknowledge Andrew Brown, the development manager from Tainui Group Holdings, is just sitting behind us. I think you had his colleague speak at the public forum yesterday. Just acknowledge Andrew in the audience. Look, I can explain it, but I'm as happy just to take the report as read and answer any questions.
I think we have had a briefing on this. Any question? Okay, moved by Councillor Tooman and seconded by Councillor Pascoe. Yes, Gordon, would you like to speak to it? Would anyone like to speak to it? Okay, I'll put the motion. Those for? Anyone against? Thank you. Thank you for coming. Okay, we'll move on to item 12, another road stoppage on CDL land.
So, through you, Mr.
Chris.
Chair, I'm happy to take this report as read. It's a road stopping that's contemplated in our proposed district plan. It's identified in there. The development's happening around this area. So happy to answer any questions.
Anyone like to move the
We've had a briefing
moved by
on this tonight.
Councillor Tooman, seconded by Philip Young. Anyone like to talk to it? Okay, all those for?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, so we're moving on now to 14. Item 14, which is the Hamilton Lake Domain Management Plan. Jamie, no, I'm in here. Okay, we'll take the report as read.
I'm happy to move the recommendation.
Yeah, we're looking for 3 elected members. There have been 3 people approach me. There's been Martin Gallagher, Karina Green and Gary Mallett. So you want to be on the working group? Anyone got any questions?
Well, I'd like to put my name forward to be on that working
I'm
group.
sure we can change it to 4. So that's, we'd have to change the recommend to 4, yeah.
Question?
Yes, Green, Councillor Mallett, Councillor O'Leary and Councillor Gallagher. Has anyone got any questions?
Question, Chair.
Yes.
It was just to alert staff to point 13 where key stakeholders are identified, and we regularly make the mistake of naming Waikato Tainui, and that's fine, but specifically there is a trust involving the 5 hapu, and it's important that that is one of the key points of contact at the start. And Muna Wharawhara, our staff Maori advisor, can advise the team on that. Thank you.
Any questions?
Just
Yes.
on, what other leaseholders are there? There's a list of them there, and this is other leaseholders, like you've got the Veranda Cafe. Who else has got leases there?
We've got the Veranda Cafe, the Hamilton Yacht Club, Waka Armour and Dragon Boating groups, and
the yacht
Waikato Hockey.
So the yacht clubs, okay, Waikato, okay, so Waikato Hockey and Hamilton Yacht Club are noted.
And the Hamilton Racing Pigeon Club
Oh, okay.
are also in this common.
What are they? Where are they? Where are they?
You know, the car park behind the
They've got
hockey.
airspace.
Yeah.
Oh, over by the hockey side.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And they've got airspace.
Truly, is that what it is?
We're renting airspace to them.
All right, any other questions? Okay, we've got a mover.
Also move.
I moved it.
Sorry,
Moved by the Mayor.
I had already moved it.
Sorry, I didn't see that. Seconded by Martin Gallagher. Anyone like to speak to it?
I would like to speak to it. It's the first time that there's going to be a comprehensive plan involving elected members in it. And so it is actually very, very important that in this process time is taken to ensure that the strategic direction for the future for this area of the city is carefully worked through. I don't see this as, you know, one of those typical management plans under an old piece of legislation. I think what the staff are wanting by elected member involvement is a direction of travel for the future that defines this area of the city of, you know, as of equal importance, if you like, as the Hamilton Gardens and part of our river and gullies, etc., those sorts of things. So I am very pleased to see that this is going to happen. People are very interested in this area and what the future of it might look like. And I, for one, am expecting to see back when the draft comes back that it is very much about the future and not something that is spat out of the Reserves Act management plan style, which is full of technical rubbish. Thank you.
Just wonder if I can ask, what if other people disagree? What if the other stakeholders and other people want a preservation of what's there?
Well, they may well, and in fact, I'm hoping that there will be preservation of some very important parts of it. But what I'm saying is, for me, and that's my view.
Yeah, okay.
Actually, sorry, Mr. Chair, I'll take my name out of that. I think the 3 members are enough, and my workload is pretty full with other groups and subcommittees anyway. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
So the recommendation's back to 3, not 4. Because
certainly, notwithstanding Angela's workload, I'd encourage her, as I did on the zoo stuff, although I was told I was on it anyway, but come along. All right, you know, because I think any other member who's upon reflection, feels they've got an input and an offer, because one of the reasons I was keen to have Angela actually there was because, to me, this area folds into Frankton and Hamilton Central, the city central transformation, and Frankton. So it is, again, a front or a back door, actually, of the Frankton area. So I'd ask Angela may at this point not want to be formally placed on it, but reflect a little, because I think there's a lot of synergy between this major sort of amenity and Frankton. So that's one issue. The Mayor's totally right when she uses the word Hamilton Gardens, because if you actually look at visitor numbers and activity, this in a different way is in many ways just as significant, particularly for domestic Hamilton, not so much for outside visitors. There's probably potential there, as one of our major Central Park places. It's a really special place. I think the other thing, picking up the Mayor's point, and I think this is where I want to our staff team and to Sally and the team, is to get, as we did on the Frankton Working Party, we had some, and we're doing on the river stuff, and we're done on Central City Transformation. Let's look at appropriate external people who can come and get us to look beyond the horizon. I'm not saying you can't and the team can't do that, but I think that's what. And then I think, picking up the Mayor's point, then we come back and test, because what I want amongst the colleagues is we need to test some of those visionary things, for example. And for example, at the moment we have the hockey fields, we have the yacht club, the Waka Ama, we have Inniscommon, the dog place. Maybe there's more potential in that area, for example. I can't quite see it, but let's really shake the tree. The other thing which I think is important, and I met one of the residents who collared me the other day, who's works at the hospital, and I think must be involved with the Restore group. And we need to really engage the local neighbours, some of whom have a bit of means, and I think down the track, we talk about funding, we talk about philanthropic funding, so there's huge potential there. And so I'm quite enthusiastic about building on what is, in my view, an exceptionally, I do a daily walk there, more or less, exceptionally successful all-weather venue, and it's quite amazing now to see the people and how it's actually working already. But I think we can actually and I think the Mayor's right, with the right looking across the horizon stuff, over time we can raise it. And I really want to relate to Central City and to the Frankton area. I want to relate it to its immediate neighbourhood as well.
Councillor Miller.
Just a question on the report, and it's surprisingly enough, it's a matter of mathematics. Number 11, page 216, staff report key issues background. During this process, considering the significance of the Lake Domain as Hamilton's premier park and region-wide destination. Now, you can only have one of those. It's either the gardens or it's the river. I think we need to, as an organisation, stop playing around with puffery when we write reports. You can only have one jewel in the crown. And it's really, really important that staff understand that not everything can be number one. And we get this all the time. The CBD's the heart of the jewel in the crown. The Hamilton Gardens is. We just line up and take turns. But we're not children anymore. This is not a social studies project. This is real life. So that sort of stuff, you've got to back that up. Can you back it up?
Definitely, we'll take on your board.
But can you back up what you said there? I mean, is it?
In terms of numbers of visitors and accounts that we have, yes, it is one of the most popular parks within the city.
Okay, is it more used than the Hamilton Gardens?
In terms of, no.
As a park, though, Gary.
Yeah, I know. But my point is not so much. My point is not everything. If you're the best, it's the best. And the other things you just have to accept. Okay, that's second best. That's third best. We can't because honestly, staff reporting is full of puffery, and this is a classic example of it.
Okay.
I don't think they're trying to say it's the best, or they're just trying to say
it's just not accurate. It's just
not accurate. So, Chair, to solve that, point 11 is one of Hamilton's premier parks and region-wide
that might be enough. That might be enough.
That's true.
And we could call Claudelands our premier events centre.
And of course, those of us who supported the Hamilton
The biggest tumour on the ratepayer.
and the chair will appreciate my humour and lovingness, but those of us who supported the Hamilton plan, you know, about the green canopy, totally consistent. Through the chair, could I just ask Councillor O'Leary could we leave, I would ask her just to reflect. I don't want a decision from her now, but I do honestly, genuinely think, given, and I know she's really busy, I get that, but I do genuinely think because of the work she's done around the Frankton stuff, and as strategy and policy chair in terms of the central city transformation and all of that stuff, I actually do think she'd be a good addition in there, to be honest. Now, I would ask her to perhaps, I'm happy for the committee to even have the right to co-opt another councillor or whatever, but I'd just like, if she does change her mind, I do think I'd want her as a full member if she so agrees.
So Mr. Chair, thank you, Councillor Gallagher, and I'm debating, but also like Councillor Gallagher, I go around there almost every day and have been doing that the day I moved to Hamilton, which was about 20 odd years ago, and next to the gardens and the zoo, I love Hamilton Lake just as much. Look, I do have a really full work program, but I do see that there's only one meeting this year, and that's, I guess, to orientate us. And then they'll commence in February, and I'm hoping, well, that will have to be after the first briefing back. And considering that, and certainly the endorsement from Councillor Gallagher, and look, I'm happy to go on that if the motion can be directed. And I think that two green heads of this side of the table need to combat the right over that side of the table. So I'm.
You've got another green over there.
Yeah, but as far as looking after our green parks, Waiwhakareike, the zoo, the gardens, and these are all premier destinations. You don't have to have one. We've got an amazing city. We've got a Hamilton plan that, as Councillor Gallagher rightly points out, one of our goals is to increase that and enhance and embrace that, and I think that's what we have to do. So Councillor Gallagher has convinced me to take on yet more work.
It's a good balance. It's a good, through the chair, sorry, thank you for your tolerance. If not, we'll take the dog park away, but it's a good balance, all right? And I think that's actually genuinely a healthy, good, and I think you've got some good, roughly 4 people who will bring some really good stuff to the table.
Mayor Hardocke, are you happy with that, Joan?
Yeah, I've only got one comment. The last time I looked at a photograph of the crown that the Queen wears, it did have a number of jewels in it, and some of them were of equal size, and it was the combination of all of those jewels that make it outstanding, beautiful, and worth a lot of money.
Yeah.
They've already paid for that crown a long time ago. A long time ago.
Some of us even get to meet the Queen and the future King.
So the review of the operative Hamilton Lake Domain Management Plan, that's compulsory, isn't it? That's something that we have to do every 10 years or 5 years. This is on top of that. This is not that, because we voted on that several months ago. This is on top of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone like to speak to this?
I moved it and I've done a right reply.
I haven't asked for anyone to speak yet, but yeah. Anyone else like to speak?
I thought we were in debate.
Okay.
I have another round if you like. Probably be,
Okay, Councillor Mallet.
Yeah.
Sorry, Julie, do you have something to say?
Oh no, I thought because Councillor King went to me, that was because of the right of reply, because I did move this.
Oh, okay, sorry.
He was confused.
Everyone's debated.
Just one more question. Financial status, page 215. It says there's a concept plan prepared by a consultant under existing budget allocated to the review. What is the budget? This is one of those housekeeping things that I bring up and Andrew brings up every now and then.
Absolutely.
We're told there are budgets allocated, but we're never told. And I've asked 4 or 5 times, I suppose, and I thought you would be embarrassed to bring them up now without those figures in there. But clearly you don't embarrass easy.
So, if I can through the chair, this was, I think, one of the first reports where your questions were raised regarding budgets, and we are we are keeping record of time as well as expenditure. In terms of this financial year, we have around, I think it's around 30,000 to be able to fund this development of the management plan. So we are well within budget, within our existing budgets on that.
The reason I ask is because on a big picture thing, you know, we've got these, I don't know, $130 million worth of rates or that we collect every year. And it all gets spent and allocated, but there's a lot of things that maybe we don't need to do or are not that important, or things that are really, really important. And when you set out on a plan like this, it would be good to know whereabouts, how much of that money is being used on this.
So through the chair, that's why we have started to record that, and we'll make that clearer in the next report back to committee.
Can I
You're
suggest?
absolutely right. We set them for everything else.
Yeah, can I suggest, and I notice some other reports now include this, but what we should have is essentially a box that says the amount allocated for the year is 30,000, spend to date 7,241, staff time spent to date, expected staff time for the rest of the year. And I think that is starting to happen. I know Luke is doing that insofar as the district plan is concerned.
No, we did that with all of them. CCTP does that.
And putting it into a private sector context, what would happen is someone would say, look, this project's nothing's going to come of this project, it's a dud, or shit, this is a great project, we should put some more on. So we get things that we just box on, do through and finish the project simply because we've got budget. And look, councillors may or may not decide to pull a budget, but there's nothing wrong with stopping a project halfway through if we think it's not worth the price. But we don't get the information to make that decision. And today we've dumped a whole lot more work on the staff, which we just think, it'll get done. But there are always competing priorities in terms of where the money goes.
The request is well noted and has been discussed a lot by the executive team, so it's just been rolled through.
But I guess, Blair, the frustration is it's taking a hell of a long time to roll out.
Your point's noted.
So, Chair, I am actually, if the budget is 30,000, because as I said before, in the working groups I've been involved in, the budget is set and we work to the budget. And that's what the budget is for the project. And it's part of a bigger budget. So I heard Sally say it's 30,000. So I'm happy, if my seconder is happy, to include an F, that the project cost for this work is $30,000. Who's my seconder?
I'm your seconder, Madam.
Are you happy with that?
Yes, I am, Madam.
And then the working group gets the report, because that's how we do it.
Could I just ask if Sally and Renee,
Was that?
don't be rude, you took a punt there. Is it 30,000?
Yes.
As long as that's the right figure. Yeah.
You've got a number.
So the seconders are agreed to include.
So that's 30,000 on top of the reviewing the operative Hamilton Lake main plan. That's not.
It will be all inclusive.
That's all inclusive.
Yes, it's the
Included,
project.
but it's noted. It's basically
So I've added an F with the consent of the seconder, which says the budget allocated to this project is $30,000.
That includes the review of the operative.
Which includes the review of,
it has to be clear
lake
that
management
it's
plan.
covering both.
Yeah, which includes the review of the lake management.
But I do want to speak to this. I'm voting against this. I just think it's getting ridiculous. We've got a central city. I understand we've got to have operative. We've got to do our statutory requirement and review these things as they come up. In this case, every 5 years. There is a budget for the lake. There are playgrounds budgets. There are things that lake, we all love it. We all constantly use it. It's probably the safest outdoor place in Hamilton with the most high value properties, and it's the best place to live, and it's constantly improving. And I believe that our staff in that department do a really good job in bringing that forward in the different areas. But we've got our Central City Transformation Plan, we've got our Gardens Plan, we've got our Lake Plan, we've got our Hamilton East Plan, we've got our Frankton Plan, we've got our Ferrybank Plan, we've got our River Plan.
Cycleways.
I'm just trying to work out what areas in Hamilton haven't got a plan. I probably wrote to Tuna. But it just appears to me that we're loading up plans, but just remember, I'm speaking.
Sorry,
debate.
point of order, Mr Chair, but we have had debate and it's the Mayor's motion and she's had her right to reply, and understanding orders, I understand, I'd like to hear from Democracy, that once the mover has had a right to reply, there can be no further speakers.
I asked the Mayor if she would be happy to change it from 3 to 4 when you said you wanted to go back on. That wasn't a right of reply.
No, I did the jewel and the crown thing.
She has had her right of reply.
Okay.
So can I have a ruling on my point of order?
We'll put it to the vote.
Or can I have a ruling on my point of order, please? You have to rule on a point of order.
Well, my
I think it's late in the day, and I think we need to move
Well,
on.
sorry, but
Could you just repeat your point of order? What is your point of order?
well, my point of order is that standing orders have been breached.
Which one?
That's my point of order.
Which one, Angela?
Okay, I apologise for speaking. All right, we'll take the vote. All those for, raise your hands. Those against? So we'll move on to item 15.
and Mallet dissenting.
Thank you. Thank you, staff.
Sorry, Chair, but I have to go.
Okay.
Does that leave enough?
7.
Yes.
We need 7. We got
Thank you.
1, 2, 7.
Okay, the item 15, the regional roundup report.
Thank you. Through the Chair, I'll just briefly introduce this and just take questions. This is the report covering the major strategic matters that Council is party to, the Waikato Spatial Plan, the various mayoral reform work programs, the Future-Proof Sub-Regional Growth Strategy, the UNISAR, which is a partnership of 4 regions up in North Island, and various strategic water matters. You will note in the report this time that I've introduced a strategic outcome section within each heading, just to try and distill exactly the strategic outcomes that Council or the partners are seeking through these various initiatives. So happy to take questions.
Blair, is this the chap, Tremaine, Ken Tremaine?
Yes.
So this is the thing we just, his issue the other day wasn't confidential, was it?
The contract was, but the particular matters relating to future-proof, which is one of the matters here, and
Okay,
I've
so
disclosed the budget in terms of our share of future-proof in the report.
Okay, so
course.
I won't say the figure of the budget, but is this one of the? So this is basically what that additional budget was that we allocated. Is that right?
One of the projects here is the future-proof sub-regional growth strategy, and that particular contract that was approved was related to the project advisor manager.
Yep.
Which
is him
in
his
correct in his capacity in that particular project.
And that is one of the things in here.
That's correct. Yep.
So that's but that is not a. Is that a confidential or a?
No. So future-proof is our sub-regional growth strategy.
But the figure, but the money was paying him. That surely shouldn't.
No. That now that decision's been made, that figure is a matter of public record.
So again, that's one of those ones where we need to get the budget figure in there, because that's hefty.
This report's reporting our share of that budget. So
just our shares that we need.
The Future-Proof Joint Committee will in the future receive the comprehensive finances for all of Future-Proof. So you'll note in the report in paragraph 81 that I have identified the budget for Future-Proof, which is our share, of course, because Future-Proof is.
Sorry, what's your reference for that?
Paragraph 81.
Oh, 81.
Yeah. So Future-Proof is a multiple council funded activity. This is just our portion of that particular activity.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions?
Comment.
Yeah, would anyone like to move?
I'll move the receipt.
Moved by Councillor Gallagher. Anyone to second? Councillor Pascoe to second. Okay, would anyone like to speak to this?
Yeah, look, and this is just a request to the chair and the deputy chair of our committee that I'm wondering next time this item comes up, and look, it's not a criticism, because I know that we've had a heap of important issues come up, but I'm just wondering if, subject to what comes up on the next S&P agenda, we could get this up higher on the agenda, Madam Chair, because this stuff in terms of, and I've said this before, I know, and I know it's a sort of dying stage as a meeting, and some of the sort of players have left, but the contents of this report is a really high-level strategic stuff, which the city, in its broad sense, while you're looking at bits of it, you're looking at the water bit, and you're looking at the strategic bit, and spatial plan bit, and the future-proof as individual items. This gives you the overview. So what I'm saying to the chair and the deputy chair, when you do the agenda setting, and I respect, I'm not criticising because I know you probably had no choice this time round because of all the other stuff, but if you could actually probably move it up higher, because I really am keen that elected members keep a really good overview on this, because this is really crucial stuff that is happening in terms of the shape of local government in the region, and also noting, of course, and it'll be good, we'll be looking forward to the bill that the Minister for Local Government will bring back to us, because this, again, you know, that intent of the government folds right into this. And there's some, you know, I've read the Minister's brief media statement, but there's some really interesting sort of commentary there. And, you know, just make sure that our direction of travel overall is consistent with central government's direction of travel and how we feel. So that's all I've got to say. I notice, unfortunately, I can't be there at the Karapiro meeting because I have a DHB, a long-standing DHB commitment in Tokoroa, but it's all part of regional governance, dare I say. But look, there's some good things, and I think the Karapiro, for those who can go to Karapiro, perhaps you might just want to underscore that, Mr. General Manager. I think that's probably will be quite a useful briefing for elected members.
Yes, and I think all elected members have been invited to that particular meeting, which is in November the 16th, from 1 o'clock at the Don Rowland Centre. What I would just comment on just briefly to Councillor Gallagher's speech there is that in particular there are some matters that we will be looking to discuss with Council early in the new year around the future-proof sub-regional growth strategy. There are going to be matters that we would need to test Council's position on. And in addition to that, there will be matters such as the water CCO, which we talked about the other day, where we'll be also engaging regularly with Council. So a number of these matters they're going to be coming back through the appropriate channels for Council to provide direction and advice on those.
Okay, any other speakers? Those for? Any against?
Sorry, I was for.
Okay, so now we're at the last item, item 17. So we've got Blair here to introduce this. We'll take the report as read.
So I think through the Chair, I'm just happy to respond to any questions where we have identified new dates or actions to be completed.
We have a mover. Councillor Pascoe from mover, Deputy Mayor Chesterman for second. Yes.
Just one question, and it's regarding the zoo strategic review, and I totally understand the issue that's going on there and the investigations going on, but the original due date was November 2014. That was well before the tragedy and things. So we were obviously dragging the chain there well before the incident.
Yes, so certainly the review was running slower than had been anticipated, but of course now, as you say, other matters have
overtaken that. Yeah. Okay.
The review wasn't finished until December. The review wasn't finished until December, so I don't know how we could have reported back in July.
I'm just looking at. So it said the original. So on the top of page 231, Rob, I'm just looking. The first one says original due date was 19 November 2014.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I don't think it was even finished by then. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's what Blair was saying. It had been running late anyway.
Yes.
And which I'd overlooked. I hadn't seen that. Hadn't noticed.
And
that.
I think Councillor Miller, as I, if I may, Mr. Chair, as I addressed at the last Strategy and Policy Committee meeting, that it was my intention to make these dates in this action list clearer when it did change, because I think the way that it wasn't clear to elected members. So thanks to the GM for providing a much clearer report, and we'll continue with that from here on.
It's a good disclosure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We've got the same challenge with finance at the moment, so maybe we'll have a look at that again in the morning. Have a look at this one.
Happy to provide intellectual property.
At a price?
Okay.
They're wanting a royalty.
Yeah.
No more questions, no debate. Those for? Any against?
Sorry, Andrew, but the recommendation's up the top there, sorry.
All right, so that was the last item, so thanks very much. It's been a long couple of days.
Well done.
Yeah. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Yeah, well done to both chairs in the room today. It was a somewhat challenging afternoon with lovely, select committees by comparison, folks, are mild compared with this, you know. Seriously. No, they are. Yeah, absolutely.
They're all told how to vote, aren't they?
Much easier to do a select committee than here.